Welcome to my channel, guys. I'm super excited to have you here today. We're gonna talk VC again. Today I will have Mick from Lunar Ventures on our show, and he's gonna tell us everything about venture capital and how to actually become a venture capitalist when before you were a filmmaker. Yes, a filmmaker to VC. How interesting is that? I know Mick already for quite some time and he's doing a fantastic job. He's super smart, but he never had previous experience in venture capital. So let's find out how he actually did it. Let's go. Awesome. So we're finally joined by Mick Halsband. No, how do you pronounce it? You have to. So even though you are Israeli, your last name seems very German.
My last name, I guess, is German, but that goes way back. So
yeah,
unfortunately, my German is not as good as my English.
Tell us a bit about yourself. So you are currently one of the founders of Lunar Ventures, which is located here in Berlin. And just tell us a bit about yourself, where you're coming from, and what kind of person you are, because we just want to get to know a bit of you as well, and not so much the venture capital just yet.
Of course, sure thing. So great to see you and to be here. Where do I start? So I guess for me, my professional story starts about 20 years ago. I originally was a software engineer. I started, as many Israelis do, in the Israeli army. Joined the intelligence unit. I was in a army unit called 81. It's similar to 8200 that people know. It's an R&D unit that does some very cool stuff. And I was super fortunate to be with, some of the smartest people I ever met. So I did it for about 5-6 years, and I was really amazed by the kind of research that people can do and the kind of, science fiction that people can really build with their hands.
Yeah.
And I think for me was kind of a lifelong dream. Like I've always wanted to do, build science fiction stuff and AI and really build technology that pushes into the future. And that for me was really a first time realizing how achievable it is and how it really looks firsthand. And I think this was a driving force for me throughout my professional life. So I worked building mobile phones for LG a long time ago. People were still building phones in Israel. So shipping phones for LG, doing embedded software. And then I did a bunch of stuff after the military. I didn't go to study computer science. Actually, I went to do film and philosophy.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. I just saw it today and I was like, what? You didn't even, it's completely the opposite side of what you're doing right now. So yeah. That was after the army or before the army you actually?
This was after the army. So after 5-6 years of kind of building software and leading teams and doing a lot of interesting stuff, I wanted to do something else, I guess. I wanted to pursue other passions, and I always was super passionate about art and about film, about video games and building stuff that tells stories, I guess. Like the idea of building stuff and communicating with other people was very appealing to me. So I went to film school and I filmed a bunch of stuff, and it was experimental, as I guess people go to film school to do experimental stuff. And naturally, I realized that working in software makes a better living than making film. So I quickly found myself.
It's harder to make money with film, right? So
a bit harder. And I quickly found myself back in software. And I guess I've been going back and forth for a few years, for sure, kind of writing some video games on my spare time and working with some startups in Tel Aviv. And I did it for a while and worked, on computer vision, computer graphics, worked for a video game company in Tel Aviv. And then kind of, I guess, explored a bunch of technologies in a bunch of industries and B2B and B2C and tried to learn new stuff, like I learned about myself that I enjoy going into new things and learning new things. But after a few years, you get the hang of it, and I don't know, you're itching to do something new.
Yeah.
And this was really true for me for a long while.
So basically, all of the tech you actually learned in the army, right? Am I correct? Or
yeah, that's pretty much true. So I went to something called Mamram, which is kind of a software school in the Israeli military. It's like a 24/7 almost school, almost 9 months, where you basically wake up at 6, 7 and start coding and doing drills and doing like weird army software army stuff, and then you do that all into the night, and then you rinse repeat for many months. And it's an interesting program because they make sure to accept equal numbers, men and women. They make sure to kind of be very inclusive, which is, I guess, one of the ideals of the Israeli military, at least as it was back then.
Yeah.
And I think that this really helped. My cohort was very diverse, and helped also kind of to see how other people's careers trajectories look, and kind of people I kept in touch with also doing very, very different stuff to my own. So this was also super interesting as well.
Yeah. And tell me, so this is really fantastic. Can you tell me, during this time when you were learning tech in the army, did you create any software that the army is still using?
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they do. So I don't get posted anymore. But I think some years after I left, project I worked on won a very national prize for security, that kind of thing. So I was lucky enough to be part of some really cool projects that made a real difference, I think.
Amazing. It would be so cool, to actually, you're there during the learning process, right? But you're actually working on technologies that might be used right now, which is so cool. And do you think because then you worked at some companies before becoming a VC, you were also a CTO for 5 years at a hedge fund, if I'm not mistaken, multitude. So you pretty much got this position just because of the army, you think, because of this training that you had? Or how did you get, there?
So my professional career, I guess, was very typical to my upbringing. So kind of growing up in a family with an engineer dad and so on, kind of I always did tech. I think gradually as you grow in a very technical ecosystem, the opportunities are just very straightforward. So, your friends start companies and friends of friends start companies, and you pretty much do the whole ecosystem is spanning around the one thing. So for a time, people build mobile phones, and then they build advertisement technologies, and then they build hedge funds, I guess, for a while, and then they do other things. So for a while, I think everyone around me was moving into finance. I think a lot of that was kind of post 2008. A lot of people, I think, realize that there's a big part of the economy that we don't understand. As an engineer, you think about building things, but you don't necessarily think about using them or about selling them or about deploying them that much. Because presumably for an engineer, if it's well made, then people will use it, and it's obviously not as easy. And for me, shifting to finance was really about kind of pursuing that value chain, thinking about where capital comes from and how it's used, and how capital markets operate. And a lot of that was a learning experience for me. And a hedge fund, I think, is a really, really funny experimentation ground on what economy is and how economy operates. Like really the building blocks of an economy in that sense.
And after that, you never wanted to create something on your own, like a company for yourself?
So I co-founded the hedge fund with a bunch of other very, very experienced founders. And the purpose there was to try to build superior technology. And I think we've done that to a large extent. I felt after a while, so this was my actually second attempt starting a company, or even third, honestly. So I think I started the hedge fund in 2011. 2008 or 9, I raised for a company doing AI for computer games. So basically building machine learning to train kind of game agents. Mm-hmm. And then before that, I worked as a co-founder in a company that did more computer vision, so machine learning for real-time reshaping of films. So kind of taking a movie and just changing it in real time as you're looking at it. And these were all, of course, teaching experiences, but, gradually you see what you can do and what you want to do and what the technology can do, but also what the market looks for. And I think for me, this was also the way I found myself building that business, the hedge fund. And this is also what ultimately led me to Berlin, I guess, developing that business and growing that network and trying to expand kind of the talent pools that we were working with.
And so then you decided, okay, I'm going to think of becoming a venture capitalist, right? But you've also never done this before. Now Lunar Ventures is almost 3 years old. It obviously took some time to actually get people to give you money.
Yeah, of all the businesses I founded, founding a VC fund is the hardest for sure. So we started Lunar really as you also know, as a smaller project, kind of market exploration called BIV. BIV for us was really seeing how we can work with the local community here in Berlin and what we thought at the time that founders really needed. What we realized was that founders don't only need capital and, smart investors, but more, I would call it an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So longer term funding, more reserves, more co-investment opportunities from the investors, syndications that actually add value, and ultimately, of course, that lead to further funding rounds. This is, of course, alongside strategic value on product, on business, on science, on technology. So kind of we had to try and think about doing everything. Gradually, we realized that very early on, there's quite a few incubators around us that are very successful and very well focused on the needs, but that what people need, and not only in Berlin, but really Germany, elsewhere in Europe, is very technical investors that can understand very technical founders. And this really, pushed back to the kind of technologies that we, myself and my partners, have worked with throughout our careers. So the machine learning and the decentralizations and blockchain, cryptography, all the really cool science fiction stuff that we've been working on all these years. I think there's always a new wave of really smart founders looking for investors that can get it, that can kind of see the vision and understand the tech and be supportive for longer hopefully throughout the lifetime of the venture.
Yes, I will just kind of rewind so everybody understands what BIV is. So BIV, basically when the guys started, BIV was Berlin Innovation Ventures. And this is the name that you started with. After a while, you actually renamed it to Lunar Ventures, and we will talk about it now, why you did it. But BIV, it was basically, you were trying to find out, what actually founders need at that time, right? And you were raising at the same time. And I know it's super tough, to raise this money, especially for the first time when you're doing a venture capital first time. And as far as I know, none of your partners back then also had any experience in venture capitalists, only in experience in the huge deep tech ecosystem, and all these products that you have guys built. And also just like to kind of, give the viewers that are maybe not from Germany, deep tech startups or like even investors are usually also located in Munich and not so much in Berlin. So you were kind of like one of the first ones that also started focusing on deep tech here. And this was one of like the biggest USPs for you, I would say.
Yeah. So maybe running through all of that and kind of trying also, as you suggested, to sort things out a bit. So BIV, Berlin Innovation Ventures, started as a very local experiment of us looking for product market fit.
Yeah.
So coming from tech and coming from founding companies, we always thought of our project as a experiment of what would the market need, what can we build, and where's the founder product market fit. We're very techy. We haven't made investments before, not in a significant way. We've made some angel investments, but seriously, this was never our career. Our career was building tech. And what we learned was that founders need more technical investors, not only in Berlin and not only in Germany, that investors look for more technical co-investors earlier, people willing and able to take more technical risk. And this is really what we realized as we were kind of ramping up Lunar Ventures as a VC. The fundraising started 2018 and we launched this summer of 19. This was about taking all of the learnings and applying them in a more pan-European model. So what do founders need? Founders need early capital investors that can look into the tech, that can take tech risks, mitigate the tech risks, and help other investors join in with investments either at the same stage where the tech is understood by the technical investor, hopefully ourselves, and more importantly, by the time the next founding round comes, whether it's moving from pre-seed to seed or seed to Series A, investing in a tech that's proven, that the deep tech aspects are less uncertain, and that the opportunity is more clear. As to the point on kind of Munich versus Berlin and, all of these kind of internal German dynamics, Germany is very large and very distributed, I guess. It's one of the most distributed countries, actually, I've seen. And it's interesting because every city is very prominent, and Berlin is not Munich, and Munich is not Frankfurt, and not Hamburg, and so on. And every ecosystem has its own flavor. Munich tends to be more, in deep tech, I would say more materials, more robotics, more hardware. Where we found there's a need is pure software. So we think of this as kind of the Tel Aviv approach, but ultimately it's about computer science and hard computer science. So how do you really take breakthrough computer science and bring it to the market, whether it's through algorithms, through cryptography, through more stronger machine learning, and so on. These are all things that can be built with a very small budget. It's just some very smart people with a laptop. Maybe coming out of, a more university setting, maybe PhDs, maybe engineers coming from industry. But all this time, it's about bringing insights and expertise and building something new that's actually very cheap to prove valuable and very cheap to deploy early on. So kind of all of the experimentation, you don't need a lab, not really. You don't need any very fancy robots. You just need to be like smart and committed and have a laptop basically to build your software on.
Amazing. So let's talk about the numbers of Lunar Ventures. So you, let's say, launched in 2019. How big is your fund at the moment? How many companies have you invested in and what they're doing? And what else are you looking for right now?
So we are a seed and pre-seed fund. Our fund is still in fundraising. The fund target is 25 million and we're just under 10 million currently. We're anchored by super smart investors, Isomer Capital and Multiple Capital and other VCs and I would say venture expert investors in Europe, in Israel, in the US. So far since launch, we've invested into 5 startups, ranging from edge, computer vision, cryptography, data science. So a really broad array of topics and themes, but typically these would be very early companies. So let's call it 2, 3, 4, super smart people with an idea, maybe a early product, maybe proof of concept, likely no revenues. So we look more at kind of product and code and what you're building and why than traction, measurable traction like sales or revenues. Early on, we think that doesn't really tell much about the potential of the company. These would be typically horizontal companies, so platforms, infrastructures, networks catering to a lot of industries. And I guess lastly, they would be global first. So founders, whether from Germany or from the rest of Europe or from the rest of the world, whether the team is based out of Berlin or anywhere in Europe, it's really about building a global company. We have companies now in Berlin, Valencia, Paris, UK. So I think, it's clear now that smart people, are working everywhere to build their next company. And gradually we know that the growth market and the later stage market is mostly US centric, but the very early stages, unicorns can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And in Europe, we think that unicorns are now coming from everywhere.
Yes.
So this is really part of our thesis is talking to smart people anywhere in Europe that are doing new things, new approaches in software, and trying to see if we can be a good investor for them.
Awesome. So, you're still, though, 5 companies already invested in, but it usually takes quite a bit of time, until you actually see some apples that you can kind of pick from the tree. And usually it takes up to 7 years, kind of maybe the first breaking point to see if there is any actually level of investment, that is going to come back into the company. Is it going to go into zero? Is there anything that you're actually making on these companies? But tell me, you're still pretty much learning, right, yourself, how this whole process is evolving, how to invest smartly. Are the investors that have invested in Lunar Ventures also helping you a lot, with their expertise, with kind of like the fuck ups that maybe happened to them in the past, and maybe you had some that you can share? How are you learning, to kind of speed up the process? So it's not, a 7-year just learning curve, see what happens, but how do you learn faster?
Yeah. So we were super fortunate to be backed by some of the smartest and experienced LPs in this space. And they, coincidentally or not, I guess, have a very strong thesis on emerging managers, first-time teams, first-time funds. We're confident that, as let's call it, for every founder that this is their first business, there's a lot to prove. And I think for our founders, as for ourselves, we have a lot to prove. We're still learning. We're certainly making mistakes. We're certainly relying on each other and on other colleagues and on our investors. Yeah. I think it's about being disciplined. It's about being transparent and accountable. It's about being open in your learnings with people you trust and you are going to be there for you and tell you the truth. If you're doing the right thing or not. Yeah. So it's often said that, VCs are kind of on the, it's on the spectrum being, between cheerleaders and, advocates and being the kind of the devil and the angel on your shoulder. I think that everyone needs these interacting perspectives. And for us as well, it's about openly discussing, a lot of the times openly arguing in the team and thinking of what could possibly go wrong, anything that could go wrong, and reiterating our own biases and our own, let's call it dogmas of what would be a good way forward and why.
So your background and philosophy actually helps you here.
I guess it does. I think it's about being rigorous in your thinking. It's about being honest in your thinking. And also we come from different backgrounds. So Elad comes from a PhD in computer science. So he's had a very successful career as a researcher, a computer scientist, working on algorithms and some of the, I guess, best institutes on the planet, with some of the best researchers on the planet. And Louis as well, coming from a more kind of product strategy background. We all bring our own different perspectives, and we don't agree always, but we're committed to make decisions together as a team. And I think it's about really teamwork, both internally, of course, as a VC, but more importantly, backing our founders and being a team that can be supportive and move forward.
Have you done any mistakes that you can share that have been maybe not so crucial, but something that you think, oh God, like we should definitely never do it again?
I can't say in terms of investing because we've just started, and of course, I hope that all of our companies exit. Likely, not all of them will exit. Not all of our companies are going to be unicorns, but we have a strong faith in all of our founders. I think internally building a new business was very, very difficult, and our learning the ropes about building a VC was challenging. I think fundraising for a fund is just bumping your head against the wall time and time again. Sometimes it's about being persistent, and sometimes it's about admitting that you don't know the right answer and trying something else until something sticks. And I think for us, it's about persistence and a lot of luck, and really being very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can say that there's a lot of learnings on how to start this business, but it's really about trying a lot and failing even, but persisting and just getting yourself up and trying the next thing the next morning and being very committed to the whole process. It takes a long time to raise a VC fund.
Yeah, and especially in terms of failing or hearing no. Obviously, you didn't just go to the first venture capitalists or maybe fund of funds that would potentially invest in you, and they all said yes, right? So you also heard quite a lot of no's.
No, absolutely. It's a known fact that if you want to raise let's call it a seed round, let's call it a dozen good names are already sufficient. For a fund, you need close to 1,000.
Yeah. So the conversion rate is how big?
Sorry?
The conversion rate is how big?
You could say it's 1%. So you could say it's lower. It really depends. Yeah, it really depends because you need to know that you have the right offer. In terms of your team, in terms of your fund size, in terms of your mandate, your strategy, and so on, so that you know that you're hearing, whether it's yes or no, you're hearing yes or no on the right product.
Yeah.
And of course, iterating on a product like this takes also a long time because the market tends to shift very gradually. So these are long-lasting relationships. You meet someone, and then in 3 months they give you some feedback, and then another 3 months, and sooner than you expect, a year has passed, and you're just still building the relationship towards let's call it a final verdict, which is usually this looks great, however, and then you have to take the however very seriously and be very, I would say, deliberate about implementing those kinds of learnings.
Awesome. And just because we already speaking for quite some time, but just kind of like last things for everybody watching, do you have any kind of like structure how you meet new people, how you meet new potential investors into Lunar Ventures? For example, for me to get inspired and to get, let's say, the contacts that I want to have and to grow my network, I have a rule that I have to get to know at least from 1 to 5 new people every single week. And I just reach out to them. Maybe I reach out to them through different, already connections that I have. And through these talks, getting to know kind of the new people out there. This is how I get inspiration. This is how I get also knowledge of different industries. Especially, like just like talking to you now, but we already knew each other from before. Do you have something like that? How do you grow your network and maybe your knowledge within your industry?
Yeah, so I think for us it's an organic thing. We still see ourselves as technical people, and we still try to be as engaged as we can with technical communities of founders, be it in Berlin and elsewhere. Of course, prior to Corona, this was easier to go around and meet new people and shake hands and, maybe hear technical talks, maybe give technical talks. I think for us, it's a combination of the communities that we're part of, our co-investors, angels that we talk to, founders that we're invested into or value, and their own networks, and our own investors, be it here in Germany, in the UK, in Israel, and elsewhere in Europe. I think these are a lot of overlapping communities, but it's really about maintaining relationships and opening conversations that don't necessarily end up with a new investment decision or a new investor for you. It's really about opening conversations and seeing what you can learn from new people and what you can add to the conversation yourself.
And tell me, do you have any maybe some books or some portals online that you read that you can maybe recommend to people that are watching right now? So we can also leave it in the comments and some kind of inspiration, to get to know a bit more about venture capital and more about also Lunar Ventures. I'm going to leave your company there as well. Is there anything that you read kind of from day-to-day basis, maybe on weekly basis, that they can also have a look at?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of resources, the Benedict Evans and the Andreessen and all of the, usual suspects, I think, are tremendous resources. I think personally, in my spare time, I try to read science fiction. I think it's about exploring futures. And to me, this is the most exciting. So I'm glad to share some recommendations, but internally we share a lot of podcasts, online articles, a lot of Medium posts from co-investors, from LPs, from founders that we think here in Europe and in the US are looking at things the right way, a fresh way, and are challenging, what might be an outdated perspective as well.
Yeah, fantastic. It would be great if you forward it to me. I'm going to leave it in the comments so you guys can also check it out. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be really, really useful because Mick would not give something which is bullshit. I know that for a fact. But thank you so much. This has been really, really amazing. And thank you for joining us. And I wish you best of luck with Lunar Ventures. I hope you will really invest into lots of companies here, and maybe you will be the first one to have all of your unicorns. You never know. You never know.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh my God, I hope it has been as inspiring for you as it has been for me. I will leave every single information about Lunar Ventures and also the things that Mick has told us that he usually reads. Make sure to check it out, like and subscribe. I really hope that you liked this episode because for me it was amazing to see that you don't have to be literally chosen to become a venture capitalist, that anybody can do it. And even someone who first was a filmmaker became a venture capitalist and has created great technologies and knows how to do it and knows how to execute. So literally anyone can do it, and I hope you like it. Like and subscribe for more videos because there's definitely more coming, and I will be finding out so much more from VCs.